The One Piece manga just made it clear that Admiral Kizaru is going to be a massive problem for Luffy, because in this chapter we get to see a glimpse of the Light Man's truly incredible powers, as he not only sends Luffy flying, but also easily destroys this giant robot and brushes aside Jewelry Bonnie like she's basically some bug. And on top of that, the insane former warlord Kuma is running wild in Marijoa, and in his first major action since the time skip, the Fleet Admiral Akainu is coming to stop him. Which honestly, I'm just super excited about this as well, because it could mean that Kuma might soon be revealing some of the world government's darkest secrets to the one Marine who has the power and the ruthlessness, let's be real, to take out the world nobles. And if this wasn't enough, this chapter also revealed a truly mind-blowing secret about the One Piece treasure, and that's because Luffy's literal heartbeat appears to have awakened this gigantic ancient robot, which could be the explanation for why Roger couldn't use what he found on Laugh Tale, why Shanks stole the Nika Devil Fruit, and also why Shanks is only now ready to actually go after the One Piece. But let's kick off things with the most heart-pounding action we've had in what feels like quite a few chapters, and that's because Kizaru is clearly not holding back at all. Even though we do continue to get brief flashbacks about all the memories that he actually shared with Dr. Vegapunk, which just makes him seem even more like a pretty good dude who is friends with a lot of those people like Sentomaru, Bonnie, and even Kuma. And really at this point, I'm genuinely worried that this whole situation is gonna end with a truly heartbreaking scene where Kizaru is forced to kill one of his longtime friends. Which honestly, I originally didn't quite believe would actually happen, but now that Oda is pulling at our heartstrings with all of these wholesome moments, like weirdly wholesome, it seems like he's really setting us up for some sort of really tragic ending here for someone. I mean, either that, or maybe Kizaru will just suddenly realize that he doesn't actually just have to blindly follow orders like a government slave, which is a pretty fitting parallel to Kuma, who was literally turned into a mindless government slave, but more on him in just a moment, because first we're gonna have to talk about how truly incredible Kizaru's powers actually are. I mean, honestly, it's always been a little bit disappointing that he doesn't exactly move as fast as our real-world light speed, but wow, I mean, this chapter really finally gave me some of that breathtaking speed that I've really always wanted to see from him. Because when he zoomed away from Egghead Island only to fly back in and absolutely crush Gear 4 Luffy, my own eyes popped out of my head a bit as well, honestly, which makes this all the more impressive because he did this to Snake Man Luffy, which, you know, arguably is Luffy's fastest form, maybe besides Gear 5, and arguably even faster. However, I'm not quite buying that Kizaru is stronger than Luffy quite yet, because we've seen many times before where a character looks super strong and competent for like a chapter or two, only for them to just get completely wiped out just a short time later. I mean, if you remember, even the CP0 agent Lucci looked quite decent in his fight against Luffy here on Egghead Island, but then Luffy quickly considered him no threat at all just a little while later. And this is especially true at the end of the chapter, apparently, where we see a giant Gear 5 Luffy reach down and grab Kizaru just like he's some sort of child's toy. So this fight definitely has a way to go, unless of course it gets interrupted by, I don't know, like a giant ancient robot or something along those lines. Okay, come on. I have to be completely honest that when I saw this thing waking up because of Luffy's Gear 5 heartbeat, apparently, my mind instantly went into like super theory overdrive, if you know what I mean. Like, we have Gear 5 Joy Boy, the drums of liberation, this giant elephant that can also hear that heartbeat, the Eternal Frame, Roger, Shanks, the One Piece. I mean, there is so much kind of seemingly related to this. But okay, let's slow down and actually break down what we know here. Like, first of all, in chapter 1067, which is already quite a while ago, we were told that this armored giant here was actually made over 900 years ago. So clearly it's something from the technologically advanced ancient ancient kingdom, which does make me wonder, why exactly would it wake up in response to Luffy's heartbeat? Well, unless this is just some sort of clever trick that Oda's playing on us, then the answer should clearly be that it can hear the drums of liberation just like the elephant Zunisha could when Luffy first awakened in Wano. And now we obviously don't really know how that exactly would be possible, but we should be able to assume that somehow the Joy Boy who was alive during the Void Century somehow also made it so that this thing responded to his own personal heartbeat, which means now that Luffy also has the same heartbeat when he enters Gear 5, this thing is waking up to possibly fulfill its own ancient mission, kind of similar to Zunisha, you know? Unless, of course, I guess it's waking up to attack Luffy, which honestly would be hilarious, but I kind of still doubt it. Though I can't wait to see what crazy powers this could actually have, because Vegapunk also told us that this thing attacked Marijoa 200 years ago, but then ran out of power before it could actually finish its job. Which, you know, actually brings up a couple of really interesting questions, like where did it come from? Are there more of these things? And maybe most importantly, how it awakened at all 200 years ago? Like, was there another Joy Boy 200 years ago with Luffy's Devil Fruit, or did it have some alternative power source that it can use as well? And speaking of power sources, this brings us to another theory which actually got a lot more evidence in this chapter, which is that Luffy's Gear 5 awakening might actually be related or even be the so-called eternal flame that the Lilith version of Vegapunk mentioned in chapter 1065. And in case you don't remember, this was first introduced during a discussion about fuel sources and Lilith saying that she would love to make her very own sun for energy. So do you see how this is connected yet? So basically, somehow Luffy's Gear 5 awakening will allow him to use his Devil Fruit to somehow create his own energy. I mean, his Devil Fruit is named after the ancient figure Nika, who is often referred to as the Sun God. And so I'm kind of thinking now that Luffy will literally make his own sun, which can power all of the other ancient technology, because keep in mind that the Vegapunks have actually made a somewhat similar fuel source called the Mother Flame, which was actually used to destroy this entire island, but it does seem to be limited and can only be made by Vegapunk on Egghead Islands. However, there is still quite a lot that we really just don't know, and I also wonder why this giant robot didn't wake up when Luffy was using Gear 5 earlier during his fight with Lucci. But can you just imagine the possibility of Luffy actually awakening a ton of just ancient technology? And speaking of just that, this could also be one of the very first major clues for why Roger couldn't actually use whatever he found on Laugh Tale all those years ago. Because we do know that his vice captain Rayleigh said that they were way too early to use what they found there, so perhaps they actually needed Joy Boy or his powers to awaken so that his heartbeat could kind of power whatever is waiting on the islands. And actually, I think it makes even more sense when you consider that it was only after Shanks saw that Luffy had awakened Gear 5 that he finally decided to go after the One Piece. So maybe Roger told him, or somehow he figured out that he needed someone to awaken Luffy's Devil Fruit before the One Piece treasure could actually be found and used. Which now I know makes it kind of sound like Shanks is only using Luffy, but hey, there's already plenty of evil Shanks theories out there, so I'm not gonna feed that particular strain. I do think he cares for Luffy on a certain level. Which now brings us to the final world-shattering part of this chapter, where Kuma is going absolutely berserk in the Holy Land Marijoa, and clearly he has some sort of mission here. Whether he was given orders by the leader of the Revolutionary Army Dragon, or by Vegapunk, or he's just going there on his own accord, we don't really know. Although probably isn't Dragon, let's be honest, since he was really surprised back in chapter 1067 when Kuma very suddenly left the Revolutionaries. And Vegapunk also doesn't seem like he would order him to cause destruction, so maybe it's just his own last desire or plan, which means that we have to ask ourselves what his actual purpose is here. I mean, it doesn't really seem like a big enough goal just to kill some celestial dragon, so if we're thinking bigger, could it be that his true goal here is to expose some of the deep dark secrets hidden on Marijoa? Specifically, I'm of course talking about the secret ruler of the world Imu, or maybe one of the national treasures is hidden deep within the castle. Maybe something like a, giant straw hat. And there's literally no better person for this kind of mission than the man with the very overpowered devil fruit that can basically teleport himself and other things. So I guess you could be asking why he didn't just use that to teleport himself up the red line, but we'll leave that aside. So could this be the moment where Emu or the national treasure is finally exposed? And if it is, I mean, my god, there is no better person to actually witness this than the Fleet Admiral Akainu himself. And so can we just give this man a small round of applause, because it's the very first time that this man actually got to leave his desk for the very first time ever since the time skip. So good job, Akainu, but all jokes aside, this man still packs a quite devastating punch. He easily melts parts of Kuma's body, although he could not quite stop Kuma from actually getting away, which is impressive. But besides the fighting, we do need to ask why Oda chose this moment particularly to bring Akainu out to play, because honestly, Akainu has always been one of the most interesting characters in the story. I mean, clearly he has a very, very strong sense of justice, even if it's maybe a tad extreme. But we do have to ask what someone like Akainu would actually do if he found out that the world government that he's been always defending his entire life actually turned out to just be a puppet all along. I mean, would he just keep following orders, or would he turn against the Celestial Dragons and Emu? I don't really know what the answer is, but there's no other more perfect time or situation for Akainu's worldview to be challenged than right now, right here. Which of course means that very soon we could get the simply mind-blowing possibility of Akainu fighting against the world nobles, and this is just such an insane idea that I actually made an entire video explaining how Akainu's journey would have turned out to be possibly if he had been a pirate, which you can watch right here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.